Hello and welcome to another Album of Record podcast. I'm Craig, joined as always by Andrew. How's it going, Andrew?
Well, as much as I would love to start off complaining about the weather again, and I could complain about the weather again, I'm not going to complain about anything this week because
Did
I'm
anything happen in sports this week, Andrew?
wearing my Ohio State sweatshirt with pride. My alma mater, my beloved Buckeyes, pulled it off, completed this story that I wanted for this team so bad. I really wanted this championship. I wanted to be the first team to win the 12-team tournament, and happened to play all four of the games, all against really good teams too. Like, that run of Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, and Notre Dame is a really difficult road to go through. Like if you had that 4-game stretch in your regular season, you'd be like, man, like we'll be lucky, well, I would take a split of those 4 games, right? And Ohio State had to win all 4 of those games. I am super proud. I really love this particular team because it's such a senior laden team, which means that these are guys that have been around the program for a very long time. I, just feel like I've watched these guys really grow up and become the players that they are. And I have been celebrating nonstop this week. I'm very excited, very proud to be a Buckeye. So yeah, I'm doing good. How are you?
I also enjoyed the game very much. I am one of those people that doesn't like Ryan Day. I don't like the way he acts. I don't like anything about the way he acts. I think he's petulant. I think he tantrums on the sideline. I think he lacks chill. But man, that guy proved me wrong. He solidified that team. He brought them together with his Just for Men beard and won the whole damn thing. Can't take it away from him. It's a poor Ryan Day, but it's there's something to be said for the harshness of taking over a program with so many built-in advantages, and it was so well on its way when he got there. He was always going to be saddled with the born on third
Sure.
thing, and maybe he finally defeats that with this championship. I don't know. It's really hard for me because I stand by my criticisms of the guy, but whether I like him or not doesn't matter. If his team coalesces around him, who cares what I think?
I think Ryan Day said it best in this post-game press conference. He said Ohio State's not for everyone, but it's for these guys. And I think like obviously you're entitled to your opinion on it, but it's very clear how these players feel about him. And I think when you continue to see
what I mean about the sideline antics and the screaming and crying at the refs all the time.
I don't really, because I don't think it's really any different than other coaches. I think it's pretty in line with what I see from other coaches. But look, first of all, not to go too far into the sports on this, but I was not somebody who felt Ohio State should fire Ryan Day after the Michigan loss. I was clearly bitterly disappointed in that loss. I was angry about it, upset with the way they played, but I have firmly believed this entire time, and I still do, that Ryan Day is not just a good coach. I think he's an exceptional football coach. He has guided this program, which, yes, it does have advantages, but so do plenty of other schools have very similar advantages. But he has maintained Ohio State as a perennial top 5 team. He gets top 5 recruiting classes every year. He's played the transfer portal game beautifully. I think he's just really good at managing a modern college football program. And beyond that, I just look at, from a coaching and X's and O's perspective, Ohio State lost to Oregon because of their defense in the regular season, and they regrouped after that, changed some things about the defense. They had some hard conversations. The defense was unbelievable the rest of the season. You lose the Michigan game because of your offense. Again, hard conversations were had. They changed some things, overhauled a few things, came out in these playoffs, and the offense was incredible. So to me, that's really good coaching. Ryan Day does it. He gave up all play calling. Chip Kelly runs the offense, but it was clear that something was said that changed the way they approached the offense after that. And I think that's a sign of good coaching. And I
You
he
only
look
get so
he
many of
got
these things in your
he
entire
and
life as a fan. And
well,
so,
that's another point he made. You have all these great Ohio State teams. This is only the third Ohio State team in the last 50 years to win a national championship. So, it's really hard to do. It's going to be even harder to do with the playoff format. So, who knows when we get another one. I'm just going to enjoy this one, and Ryan Day gets the last laugh. And the this run of coaches that Ohio State has had is just unreal. To go, I mean, how many programs can go back to back to back coaches like Jim Tressel, Urban Meyer, Ryan Day? Like it, we're very lucky as
and even
Buckeye
Luke
fans.
Fickle kind of as the interim, he didn't
Yeah,
embarrass himself either.
yeah. I mean, it was a rough year when he was in charge, but he certainly has proven himself to be a very solid
Yeah,
football coach in his own
I
right.
felt like he
He had
handled
no chance
himself
that year.
just fine.
He handled himself great. He took a beating to his coaching reputation
I'm
for
sure.
the sake of the program, and I'll always respect him for that. But
So anyway, this is a music podcast. Every now and again, we get to scratch the sports itch because that's who we are as well.
yeah, I mean, and again, I mean, there's no, and when it comes to sports, like Ohio State is just number one in my, I mean, it's literally in my blood. Born and raised in Ohio, rooted for Ohio State my whole life. There was no other school I wanted to go to. I went to Ohio State, graduated from Ohio State. Like, Ohio State is by far the most important sports thing for me. So I had to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, and I properly slot myself as a non. I didn't go there. I grew up in Ohio. I became an Ohio State fan because I live in Ohio and because they stole my professional football team, the Browns, for 5 years and some very important years of my life.
Yeah.
And that was the only. I wasn't going to go root for another NFL team, so I really leaned in on the. I think that was the tail end of the John Cooper era.
Yes,
It
it
was very
was.
fun, very
Yeah.
fun to be an Ohio State fan, and it's also kind of interesting to root for one of those New York Yankees, Dallas Cowboys level brand names
It
that
is.
people despise around the country. As a Clevelander, whether it was the Indians, Guardians, Browns, or Cavaliers, other than I guess a couple LeBron years, I've never been the hated front runner type person, and rooting for the Buckeyes gives me a little taste of being that front runner. Like, what is it? Who would be the equivalent in Premier League?
Well, it used to be you used to would say Manchester United, but now it'd be Man City probably.
Or Liverpool?
Yeah, well, but Liverpool's only won the Premier League, I think, just once.
But
I
it's
think.
about being
I
that
mean,
hated
in
brand.
in the like modern era. But yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's probably still to some degree Manchester United, even though they've been kind of
Yeah.
down on their luck these last couple of years.
And one of the reasons we're talking so much about sports is because as far as music news goes, there just isn't that much to talk about. We've gotten more and more leaks, more not leaks, but hints and rumors and stuff that's forthcoming. But actual releases and actual things to listen to and talk about, there's not much going on. I guess we got a Nine Inch Nails tour.
Yeah,
You're
which
gonna
was
find
kind of
yourself seeing Nine
interesting.
Inch Nails this year.
It's funny because with Nine Inch Nails, like what I'd really like is for them to say who's actually in the band that's performing on this, because it does make a difference to me. Is Robin Fink going to be on guitar? Because if he's not, I'm less enthused about it, and I want to know who's going to be playing drums on it. And I don't know if you can find it, but I tried looking for that information and I found nothing.
It's funny because I saw them a couple of years ago at the Louder Than Life festival, and I don't really remember. I don't know who was playing with them on that tour either. But yeah, it is important because it changes the dynamic and the
It
energy
does.
on that
It
stage.
totally does. Totally does.
So
Like,
it's going to be lineup dependent for you.
well, I mean, it'll be that. It'll be cost. It'll be
It's
like I'd kind of
basketball
like to
arenas this
know.
time.
I'd kind of like to know what even like what their set kind of looks like. Like I'm in a weird place with Nine Inch Nails right now. Like
It's been a
I
long time since they've made anything vital for me personally.
agreed. So Hesitation Marks. I really liked that album, but I've not gone back to that album in a very, very long time. So like, it's we're talking at this point, it's been like 15 years, I think, since Nine Inch Nails put out something that like really stuck with me. So I don't. The answer is I don't know. I'd probably like to see them again. Maybe I'll go, but yeah, like I also like seeing them on the With Teeth tour and the Lights in the Sky tour were a couple of the like just best concert experiences of my life. That was when they were really leaning into the whole stage thing. And then I saw them on their farewell tour, and this still leaves a bit of a, and I don't, it shouldn't bother me because I even said at the time, this probably isn't really going to be their farewell tour, but it was
Right.
the Ninja tour that they did with Jane's Addiction. And they said that that was going to be it, that they were, Trent said he was done with Nine Inch Nails. And the crazy thing was, he said it's possible he would make music as Nine Inch Nails again, but he was done touring as Nine Inch Nails. And so I went out of my way to go see it, and it was not a good show. Robin was sick at that show, so they played a very quick, and you could just tell he wasn't himself playing guitar. He wasn't really into it. Jane's Addiction was not good. We actually left before Jane's Addiction was even done. And so like it left like a bit of a sour taste in my mouth, I guess. So long story short, well, long story long, it depends. I need to kind of see some things about what's going on with that tour before I decide.
Mine's so dependent on what my friends will get excited for. And I just have this feeling that there will be a critical mass of people who want to go to that show. And I'll say, yeah, sure, no problem. I could think of worse things to do than see even a mediocre Nine Inch Nails show
That is
at
fair.
Rocket Mortgage
Totally
Field
fair.
House.
If the
You know,
fact that
it's
they're
like
doing, oh, go ahead.
it's like a lot of shows that I want to go to. It's like pulling teeth to get anybody to out there to go
Well,
see
yeah.
it. But somebody like Nine Inch Nails, it's very easy.
Yeah, good luck trying to find people like to go see Soul Glow and bands like that I want to see. But you know, even like Drug Church, like it's a hard sell for people. But
Well,
I
and
was
as big as we think of those bands, and even like I got 2 tickets to see MJ Lenderman. I'm gonna have to explain MJ Lenderman to somebody if I want them to go to
yeah,
the
which is
show,
crazy.
because I'm
Seems
in my
crazy
mid
to us.
40s, and
Yeah,
my peer group, you know, I'm not hanging out with a bunch of 20 somethings. My peer
yeah.
group doesn't know MJ Lenderman.
Yeah. But I was going to say the fact that Nine Inch Nails are playing basketball arenas, though, does make me intrigued if they're going to put together an actual, like some kind of stage presentation again. And that would actually have me hyped because they
I saw
do.
the seating chart. It's a big pit too.
Okay. Well, we'll see.
A bunch of torn ACLs and strained AC joints and shoulders, but we're gonna mosh.
Yeah.
So one of the things we talked about last time was just trying to go back and figure out what are the 30-year-old records that we could end up talking about, and especially with our little dead period here, it got me thinking even more importantly, what are the 20-year-old records? Because you know, before we hit the record button, you and I talked about how, you know, you kind of memory hold the
Early to mid
early part of the
2000s.
2000s. So can you name anything that came out in 2004?
Let's see here. Immediately off the top of my head, I feel like it's possible Queens of the Stone Age Lullabies to Paralyzed might have come out in 2004.
I don't know about that one.
Let's see. Yeah, man, I don't know. Somewhere, what year did Riot Act come out? Riot Act might have been 2004. I can't believe I don't know
Didn't make
that.
the list I'm looking at. Let me give you a couple examples.
Okay.
All right. So I was never a fan, but Franz Ferdinand.
Oh, okay. I saw them live a couple years ago. Never.
Yeah.
It was actually a fun show.
Did you ever listen to them?
Yeah, like whatever their big album was, I listened to it at the time. Like not a ton, but I mean, I like when I saw them, like I knew a decent chunk of their songs. Riot Act was 2002, by the way. Just look that up.
One of the biggest records from that year, although probably grew in stature after 2004 to this day, a band that I will be seeing in February at a festival, Hot Fuss by the Killers, was a 2004.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Because
That sounds right.
that was one of those, hey, you got to hear this record from this new hot band, and then now it's just an absolute classic.
Yeah, for sure. Also, I was 1 year off on Lullabies. Lullabies to Paralyze was 2005. So I am not very good at this game of figuring out who was around
No,
in
it's fun though
2004.
because even as I list some of these, I'm trying to think about which ones you and I would want to go deep and
You
talk about for an entire episode.
when you said Hot Fuss, that made me think of Hot Hot Heat. You remember that band?
I do remember Hot Hot Heat.
Yeah, they Make Up the Breakdown came out in 2002. So just
Okay.
missed the mark there on that. We'll have to wait. We'll have to wait for the 30 year for that one, I guess.
Yeah. Another.
Which, by the way, I saw them live at like a tiny little bar here in Columbus, and like it was actually a fun show. Like it was a fun show, like very different band.
I love those kinds of shows where you have no expectations and you just go into it and you end up being pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
An indie rock classic, although the band has had some ups and downs. Funeral by Arcade Fire.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so that was Funeral was the like breakout one, right?
So that was I think that was technically the debut, but later on they released like the early demo or
Okay.
whatever. You know, this is a band that had a demo
was-
that they toured on in Canada, but that
Yeah,
was their big debut. Yeah.
It was the one before Neon Bible.
Yes.
Okay. I couldn't remember like that order because I can never remember what the name of the one was that came after Neon Bible.
The Suburbs.
Suburbs. Yep, that's right. So,
all right, and you're going to kick yourself when I get to the third one from here. So you got Three Cheers for Sweet Revenge by My Chemical Romance.
yep. Definitely listen to that.
Ginormous record.
There's going to be I don't know if it'll be on your list. There has to be like a Thursday album in 2004.
I'm not gonna. I don't have that one. I could look that one up, but I don't. I think War All the Time was a different year, but I don't know. Good News for People Who Like Bad News. Modest Mouse.
Okay,
just
that
bananas.
is a 2000s band. That is a Modest Mouse is like the 2000s band,
which
sure.
is so funny because it's one of those. It's one of the. I was not always early. I wasn't that cool. But I had friends in college who turned me on to Modest Mouse with their really goofy experimental indie rock. And so for me, this was like, wait, Modest Mouse is making radio hits? What is going on here?
Yeah.
Because I just remember, Isaac Brock screaming about dirty fingernails and reversing guitars and doing all kinds of really stupid stuff that it was really enjoyable, but it was like really avant-garde.
Yeah. So, by the way, a couple of things real quick. War All the Time was 2003, but what you're looking at 2004 albums. Mm-hmm. It's 2025.
Yeah, you're right. It's 2025.
I thought of that as I was looking. I was like, wait a second.
So now I'm celebrating the 21st anniversary of records. My God, this is the.
I didn't realize it till just now. As I was like, wait a second. Like, what year? Wait,
and for the audience at home, you guys can laugh at me. It's fine. We're going to leave this in. I've been basically high on cold medicine for a week and a half. And so I think this is like the come down from being on cold medicine. All right, I'm going to list one more 2004 record before I jump to 2005 the way we should have.
Yeah.
And that's American Idiot.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, that was a huge one, obviously.
And I never even bothered to listen to American Idiot because it was so all over the radio. I felt like I didn't need to listen to it.
Loved that album when it came out, and
but you get my point. Like it was ubiquitous on the radio.
That it's hard to explain how big that album really was. I mean, they made it into a freaking Broadway show. Like it was massive. And I listened to it so much that to this day, I really hate it. And I'm being dead serious. Like I've never killed an album for myself like I did that one. I mean, I just went nuts on that album.
All right. Well, so 2005, I think might be more of a Craig year than an Andrew year.
Okay. So we got some Death Cab.
Well, let's start with one that hits both of us though. That was With Teeth by Nine Inch Nails.
Yeah.
You and I both liked that one.
Very much like that. I like.
I guess we were already friends, weren't we? Because I think we listened to that one together.
We had to have been.
That's crazy. No, we listened to a later one.
Yeah, because I don't think you started at waiting till next year, waiting for next year till I think it was 2007, because I think, or even 2008, because I think we didn't start it till 2007.
Yeah, you're right. It was, I think it might have been Hesitation Marks
Yeah,
that we talked about.
yeah. But
Anyway,
man, we did that on a podcast many moons ago. I know we talked about it on a podcast.
sure. Okay. Yeah, Death Cab Plans, which is a ginormous record for me in my world. I'm, you go very shallow on Death Cab, right?
Yeah, correct. I can always listen to them and be perfectly content listening to them. I just hardly ever choose to listen to them. And for me to sit here and pick out like my favorite Death Cab album, like I don't know that I could really do that, but
Francis the Mute by the Mars Volta.
that's a good one.
So at some point, I'm not sure we can devote an entire episode to one record by the Mars Volta, but if we did an entire episode on At the Drive-In and the Mars Volta, that would make me very happy. I followed the singer, by the way. I would just stick with the vocals and go At the Drive-In and the Mars Volta.
Well, I go.
What was the other band?
Sparta. Which
another great band, but I don't
preferred Sparta to Mars Volta, but
not even close for me. But I hear you. Sparta's good. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to trash them.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into it more, but I'll just say that the new, quote unquote, new At the Drive-In without Jim Ward is just not. It's just not the same, and I'm not just saying that. Like that, there's just something about his approach to playing guitar that just, I don't know, like added a weirdness to them that they're missing without him. Like he pulled in a different direction. Like it's clear why they didn't get along. Like they're very different musicians, but like I don't know, it's just like one of those, like the whole is greater than the sum of the parts or whatever it is. But yeah.
So another one that's all me is Coheed, Good Apollo. It's like their fourth.
I did listen to that, but I don't love Coheed.
All right, now see, this is why it's good to go through this. Now here's one that I know I listened to a couple of times, but I never gave it the proper amount of attention that I would like to. And I might actually, with the relative quiet here in 2025 so far, maybe I'm going to listen to this for the next week. Separation Sunday by the Hold Steady.
So I'm not a Hold Steady guy. This is one of those bands that like everybody loves that
you're supposed to like, and you just don't like,
and I just don't get it. I have tried so hard to get into them. One of my all-time favorite bands, Titus Andronicus. Patrick Stickles is a enormous fan of the Hold Steady, and what's their singer's name? Hold Steady.
I always forget.
Finn or.
But it's the kind of band that like people you respect and people you love them, and so you feel like you should love them. Craig Finn.
That's Craig Finn. Yep. And that's where I was getting at was, Patrick Stickles like worships him and like always hypes him up. And it's like, so I tried and I tried and I tried. I just don't get it. It's not my thing.
You know what my version of that has always been, and they're on this list with a record called Picaresque, is the Decemberists. Everybody was always like, you like this band, this band, this band, and this band.
I would have thought
Craig,
you liked
you should love the Decemberists. And I tried, and I found them to be, I should go back and try them again too, but I found them to be just kind of precious, I think.
I thought you were going to use that word, and I was like, because I think that's accurate on how I perceive them. But like,
and sometimes I like precious.
That's what I was going to say. That's why to me, it seemed like maybe you would like them, because you do sometimes like things more precious than my taste. But yeah.
All right. I see. Here's one. I don't know if you listened to this. You could have gone either way on this one. Alligator by the National.
So I actually didn't really get into that one that much. I definitely remember people talking about it, and I remember listening to it and thinking it was fine. But what was the album that had Blood Buzz Ohio on it?
I always forget.
Whatever that was, the National album that I finally like really went all in on. So I really didn't get into them much.
Boxer. Is that Boxer?
No, it's not Boxer even. Boxer was another one that everybody really loved. I'm pretty sure it was the one after Boxer.
High Violet, that's the
High
one.
Violet. Yep, that's it. And that's the one
See,
that
I
I
never went.
really got into.
I never liked. Every time I listen to the National, I like it, and I enjoy their records. But it was always in the background. I never, other than Blood Buzz Ohio, I never learned any of the song names.
Yeah.
And so, like, I love it when it comes on a Spotify playlist or it comes on and I'm listening to it, but I just never, it's not something I owned. And so I don't have it committed to memory the way I do other stuff.
I do think that they are best in small doses too. Like, it's, for me anyways, that's always kind of how it's been with them.
It's an atypical band for me to enjoy because the vocals are that deep baritone. I usually want a vocalist who has a high range and goes after it, and he's kind of a, and not in a negative way, but he's kind of a slacker vocalist in a lot of ways. But they've got a you know, the word vibe is overdone, but they've got a vibe.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's see. Where do we go from here? I'll skip Nickelback. I'll skip Wilco.
Which Wilco was it?
It's a live record, Kicking Television.
Oh, yeah, which is actually quite good, but
it is. I only got into Wilco in the last few years, actually.
Yeah,
it's like Wilco, My Morning Jacket, bands like that. I have a tough time getting into.
So I got more into My Morning Jacket, but with Wilco, for me, I'm one of those like, oh, I just like Yankee Hotel Foxtrot kind of people. Like I can't help it. I really love that album, and the rest of their albums, I listen to them, and there are songs I like and songs I really don't like. So it's always like a bit of a mixed bag for me with them. But My Morning Jacket, legit, really like. Well, not anymore so much. There's something about them that like just went off the rails for me with their direction that they've gone in recent years. A lot of people still love it, but it's, for me, it was just like, this isn't what I liked about
My Morning Jacket was tough for me because I fell in love with one song, which was really sparse and beautiful and whatever else. And then, you know, they went in a, that's not really who they are. And so I always had this kind of mismatch between what I loved about them and what they actually were as a band. And I just could never quite catch up. And I was supposed to see them at a festival, and then they pulled off. And that's when, let's see, what's that other band that, man?
Band of Horses?
No, it was like Wild Pink. We compared them to Wild Pink earlier in the year. It's a huge band, like a bunch of members and playing Americana. I'll think of it eventually.
Yeah.
They put out a live record last year that was really good. You don't like them as much as I do, and you kind of made fun of them. But at some point, I'll think of it. It doesn't do us very much good.
You didn't see My Morning Jacket open for Pearl Jam ever on that, whatever tour that was? I saw them a couple times. They were phenomenal. It was such a good like pairing. Like that was a really good opening band for Pearl Jam. But yeah, like I really got into Z obviously was a huge album. For me, Evil Urges is personally my favorite. Circuitous, I really liked a lot of stuff on that. And then after that, I kind of fell off.
Them. All right. I was trying to look up that band, but I'm going to do something else. All right. Get Behind Me, Satan by the White Stripes.
Yeah, not crazy about that one. That one didn't do much for me.
But you're more of a White Stripes person than I am, right?
Yeah. I do like White Stripes quite a bit, but just that album I really didn't connect. Like I'm sure I would know some songs if you said them, but like off the top of my head, like I'm trying to even remember what like the big songs were off of that one. I just know that one didn't click with me. But we got
the war on drugs. It was the war on drugs.
Okay, yeah.
Took over for My Morning Jacket.
Yep. I'm trying to think. So am I mixing up my years? What year are we on? 2005? Yeah, no.
2005. Okay. Not 2004, because that would be stupid.
Well, I was trying to think if we're getting close to Era Vulgaris by Queens of the Stone Age. Like, but I think that was probably 2007 or even like I think that was a little bit later.
Yeah, that was 2007. Another band that I think is more me than you, In Your Honor by Foo Fighters, the double record. It was a big
So
record.
it was. And I have a funny like thing about that where so like that album, like I remember they put like some kind of copyright protection on the CDs so that you couldn't rip them to MP3. And at this time, I was still buying CDs, but I was buying them and then I would rip them to MP3 and put them on my 160 gig iPod or whatever, those back in the day when we actually had iPods. And I was so frustrated by it. I wrote a scathing letter to, I don't know if it was the record label or Foo Fighters themselves or whatever, and they sent me some kind of software that I had to install, but it allowed me to somehow download the albums onto MP3. They did some kind of weird
Oh,
workdown
that's
for me or
crazy.
something. So it's kind of funny
The,
to think about.
Such a 2005 problem that never happened again.
That's right. That you are correct. That is the only time that ever happened.
But by the way, Lullabies to Paralyze was 2005.
Okay, so Lullaby was 2005. Yeah.
So I saw it on the list and I knew you'd be happy all of a sudden.
Yes. So I am happy because if we want to, we could do a 20. I don't know if you would have enough stuff to say about that to do an episode, but
I would not.
All right. I
love
that album.
I know it's a worthy record.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, would I be able to do an entire episode on Talk by Sigur Rós? I love that record, but probably not.
Yeah. But the thing about Lullaby is like, it was the album that...
Go ahead.
Well, I was just saying, it's the song it's the album that had to follow Songs for the Deaf. And like, that was such a monumental task. And I just loved the way they approached it. I thought they nailed it, like in terms of how to follow up an album like that. Like it was a very different sounding Queens of the Stone Age album. They didn't try to just lean into the things that made them popular, which I know, like as a business decision, some people may not appreciate that, but just from an artistic perspective, I just thought it was such a cool way to follow that album up. But anyways.
Well, now I'm looking at the Pitchfork 2005 list too, and they've got Fiona Apple, Extraordinary Machine on there. It's very Pitchfork. Spoon, Gimme Fiction.
Spoon's one that I never really got into too much.
It's weird to say about a band like Spoon, but I like their hits.
Yeah.
What do you mean hits?
Hits is relative, but yeah.
Yeah.
But critics love Spoon. That is a band that critics absolutely love.
It's like, is it one of those bands where even though it's not for you, you kind of get it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Those are my favorite. Like I don't have to get the Mountain Goats, but the Sunset Tree was 2005 and critics love that record, and I understand.
Yeah.
But it's interesting with us naming all these random records. There's no like cohesive sound or cohesive thing that's pulling all this together in the way that I felt like the 90s was.
So I really think what happened was so you have these grunge thing happen in the early 90s. Then the combination of Kurt Cobain's suicide, Pearl Jam, like pumping the brakes on everything and like basically like trying to actively turn fans away from them. Soundgarden breaking up, like Lane Staley having his drug issues and Alice in Chains not recording. Like you have this like middle period of the 90s where these bands were all in flux and limbo. And then we had the second wave of grunge sort of like come in behind them into the later mid to later parts of the 90s. And then like when that finally just toppled, because like I think a lot of those like there is some second wave grunge stuff that I did like and that I could still listen to today, but for the most part it wasn't good enough to sustain all the hype and attention, and it was like a Jenga tower that just collapsed. And in the wake of that we had like the boy band thing happen, and then Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera so like brought like pop music back to the forefront.
Well, and even to that point, a lot of the previous rock artists or the alternative artists were kind of moving into pop, because I'm looking at the Hot 100 from 2005, and the second most popular song was Hollaback Girl by Gwen Stefani. It used to be categorized as rock and roll. And then probably the first rock song I see on the Hot 100 is actually by a pop star. It's Since You've Been Gone by Kelly Clarkson, which is,
Yeah,
yeah, it's poppy, but that's definitely a rock song. It's
for
got
sure.
guitar blasting all over it.
But what I really think happened in the 2000s then was like it was almost like wiping the slate clean for rock music. And the thing I think that really happened, that I don't know if you'll totally agree with me because I know you don't like this band very much, but for me, I loved them, was the Strokes sort of redefining what rock music was going to be in the 2000s. And I think like out of that, like there was a lot of bands trying to figure out like, oh, we can do this spin on like classic rock in a modern way, and all these bands tried to do it in different ways, and so there wasn't a cohesive sound that was happening, but there was like all this. To me, I still feel like the Strokes were like the band that sort of like brought that next wave of what rock music was going to be, and like a lot of bands like branched off of that even if they didn't sound like it.
Yeah, I didn't like it. I felt like it was inauthentic because they were doing an impression of a previous era that they hadn't been around for, and it bugged me.
Yeah,
It just bugged me. The music was fine. I liked the singles, but this idea that this guy, everybody was trying too hard for Julian Casablancas and the Strokes to be the saviors of rock music and everything else. I got really tired of the narrative around it, and I was grumpy. I was super grumpy and elitist in those days, and as you
yeah.
can tell, there's some residual resentment sitting in my bones to this day. I don't think it's based on anything real, but that's just how I felt in the moment, and I've never really
Well, I
decided
think
to rethink it.
we were caught up in that crossroads. Like we were left like almost, I think this is probably partially why we memory hold so much of that era. It's like I think we were, as music fans like you and I, and like our taste kind of left like wandering in the desert for a couple years, like trying to figure out where do we go from here. Like, you know, the music we grew up on was pretty much, I mean, Pearl Jam was still around, but for the most part, like that was gone, and it was like, well, where do we go from here?
I
And
was really into indie rock. I was at the tail end of kind of that emo thing and the screamo thing with Thursday, but then I was starting to get into Iron and Wine and some of the softer. Is it folk? Is it country? Is it indie rock? Yes,
yeah,
and that's kind of where I was. And so certainly this was a post radio existence for me. I was no longer listening to rock radio at all.
right,
I
yeah,
had I had that ginormous iPod as well with
yep.
all my music on it. I think I probably still have that brick somewhere around this house.
Did you also have the big like Sirius or XM satellite radio adapter you could set in your car, like when it
I
had the
did.
big? Yeah,
That was my Christmas present one year, was an
yeah,
XM satellite radio thing that where I
yeah,
had to run the wire for the antenna
yep,
in my car. It
yep.
was it was wild times.
People will
But
just
this was
never
also,
understand that it was a tweener era for technology too. Like it's so funny to think about, like we were in that transition era from where we had been to where we were going. It was such an awkward time for music all around, both in terms of what people were creating, but also how we were consuming it.
but and I was one of these people that had bought way too many CDs all the way through college, and in my immediate post college years, I graduated college in about 2001, and so this is 2003, 2004, and my roommate at the time was a computer programmer, and so he took a freeware CD rip program, and he auto programmed, or he programmed it so that it would rip a CD, pulling information from the CD database, and then when it was done ripping it, it would spit the tray back open.
Yep.
And so we would sit around watching TV all night, popping one of my CDs in, and then when it was done, it would automatically spit it back out. We'd walk over and drop another CD in, and so we ripped my entire collection, and that's how we were listening to music in those days. And for him, it was like he got access to all my music, and for me, I had mobile access to all my music. And then I went from the iPod, the original iPod with a little hard drive in it, to many iPod nanos.
I never did the Nano. I never did the Nano.
I love them so much because you could have multiples. I was a psycho, so I had two or three nanos with different, types of music on them for different types of things. And
Yeah.
yeah, just wild times.
I loved that. Like my iPod was my most prized possession. Like if anything would have ever happened to it, I would have been just devastated beyond words to lose my
I had
music collection.
three. I had three USB hard drives with triplicate backups of my MP3 collection
Yeah.
because I was
I
living in fear that anything would ever happen. And now I couldn't possibly care less about those MP3 files.
I was gonna see if I could reach over into my cabinet back here. I still have those big spools of like that the blank CDs would come in.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I have a massive spool of CDs that are like not burned with audio, but data of my MP3 albums, like just a massive like spool of it, which I still have for some reason. Just can't bring myself because I have a lot of like live stuff on those that even though I have no way of like if I were to pull that out, like I have no way of getting it off of that CD now because I don't have a CD drive. But
Which reminds me, I think I had one of my cars had the CD player could read data CDs.
I remember when that was a thing. Yeah.
So I could put in a 650 meg or whatever it was data CD
Yeah.
with 27 albums or 25, whatever, however many albums fit.
Yeah.
Remember when they used to sell MP3 players with like the number of songs, like 10,000 song
Yep.
MP3 player?
Yeah, because people didn't know like what data was or like storage. Like it was such a foreign concept to people. So we had to translate it into how many songs it could actually fit.
Yeah. And my sons are 14 and 12, and every now and again I'll start to talk a little bit about what it was like, and I realize it doesn't matter, and they don't care, and nor should they care.
Yeah. They have
Trying to
no frame of
remind
reference
people
to understand that. Yeah.
it's more interesting to them when I talk about movie rental stores, because I was explaining to them like what a treat it was to go to the video store on Friday night and rent 2 or 3 movies, and
Absolutely.
the local store that we went to gave you the free giant bag of popcorn that was extra buttery and salty, and
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and
I think about that too. Like we've talked about this with music, but it applies to movies too. Like there's still something about just having a giant wall of physical media, in this case, VHS covers or DVD covers. I mean, I remember it being VHS when I was a kid, and like just browsing, right? Like you didn't have to go into it knowing what you wanted to watch. We would go in there with no clue what we were going to rent, but it was like easy to like figure it out as you would just walk down the aisle and like look at all the rows. And for whatever reason, when I browse like Netflix now or, any of these streaming services, like in some ways it's almost like too overwhelming. Like there's almost too many options or something. And I have a hard time picking something that I want to watch. And I run into this problem with music all the time where it's like, I don't know what I want to listen to. And like, I always like pull up Spotify and I'm like, I just want to browse my collection in some way. And like, there's no way to just browse. And I really miss that feeling, but
yeah,
it
and
just
the
made me think of that.
recommendation engines are kind of cool and they're getting better and all that kind
Yeah,
of stuff, but it still feels impersonal.
because you're being told what the algorithm thinks you want to listen to, and there are times that it's really good at that, but like I miss like feeling like I was in control of what I wanted to listen to. And it's like it's so funny, it's so like these last couple like last couple months without having new music, like I'll pull up Spotify and like trying to think off the top of my head, what do I want to listen to that I haven't listened to in a while? It's like, God, I don't know. Like I've lost that ability to just think about what I want to listen to. And so, yeah, I don't know. We did lose some of those little things with
Yeah.
technology. But
All right. Last but not least, we have 2 kind of quick hitters before we disconnect here. Number one, there was a teaser website for Deaf Heaven
yeah,
that answered no questions at all, but I'm super excited.
they literally all it did was ask for your phone number and
Which I
or
gave
email
them.
address. I also gave them. They changed their logo on their Spotify account. It is some kind of new logo.
And
I
because I'm
presume
45 and a father, they also did it on Facebook, Andrew.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I'm sure they did it on Instagram as well. What is the name of the website? I kind of forget now already. Which I presume is going to be the name of the album, but let's see if I can.
I'll find it in a second.
Okay. I can't believe I already forgot what that. But anyways, but they also in the background of this video that's playing on this thing, what or on Instagram.
Lonely People with Power.
That's it. Lonely People with Power. So I'm going to guess that that's the name of the album. Lonely People with Power. Is a little 10-second clip of, and I don't know how to feel about this. I was thinking about it today. I listened to Ordinary Corrupt Human Love on the way into work. And the first track on that, You Without End, it starts with that piano intro, and it's like this really like delicate, long building intro to the album. And I was like, you could pull a 10-second clip from that, and if I would have just heard it, I'd be like, boy, that doesn't sound like Deafheaven. So I'm not panicking over the fact that this 10-second clip isn't what I was hoping to hear for as the next thing from Deafheaven.
Yeah, I wouldn't overthink it.
I'm not worried about it, but I'll just say, like, it was not exactly what I was hoping to hear first. As we're just guessing at what direction we talked about this, I think last week or maybe 2 weeks ago, like what direction they might go in for this album. But I'm excited no matter what. Like Deafheaven having new music out is a massive event in you and I's like musical experience. Like this is a big deal for us, so I'm excited.
And the only reason it's even remotely confusing is because of what they do with Infinite Granite and trying to figure out whether or not they're going to keep going in that direction, whether it's going to be some kind of a hybrid or they're just going to go back to the black metal vocals.
Yeah.
And if I had to guess, I'm going to guess it's going to be a hybrid. I think there's probably going to be a few clean songs and a couple black metal songs.
Which, again, they kind of did that with Ordinary Corrupt Human Love. Like, there are a couple of songs on there that are not black metal vocals. Now, I think they had guest vocalists.
I think so, too.
To do those, but still, the point remains. And even on Sunbather, like, the interludes on Sunbather are not, like, aggressive in your face. Like, that's what makes Deafheaven so great, is their ability to do both of those things really well. And so I just want to be surprised and delighted. I'm ready to go on another journey wherever the crew wants to take me. So I'm excited. I'm just excited that it's on the horizon. We're getting something new sooner than later from Deafheaven.
All right. And I think last but not least, Spotify decided to host an inauguration brunch at the Trump inauguration and made a $150,000 donation to the inauguration ceremony.
Yeah, so this was an interesting thing. And
by the way,
take on this,
my take is quicker.
Yeah,
I didn't find it interesting at all.
Okay.
Like, I just think this is what companies do. I don't think it means anything. I think it's just the cost of doing business in America. Sad. I'm not justifying it, saying it's good, bad, or indifferent. It's just like, okay, yeah, this is what people do now.
Yeah, I mean, to put that part of it in context, like their Spotify statement about this, I'll just read this verbatim here. This is translated from Swedish, I guess. But the donation aims to continue to expand our presence in Washington, D.C., while furthering the goals of our platform and our creators. It is in line with the work we do in capitals around the world to advance our policy issues, regardless of who is in power. And so I don't want to discount the fact that to some degree, like, this is just what you have to do. Like, if you're a big publicly traded company like this, like, you have to have influence and you have to lobby for whatever your best interests are. I get all that. The part that's disheartening to me, I think, was just, and this is not like the political side of it, although like it is a little bit, I'm sure, eyebrow raising for a lot of artists who are most definitely not Trump supporters to see this platform that they already feel like don't pay them enough royalties, paying $150,000 to Donald Trump's inauguration. That was the part I think that hit me. And then this thing points out, like, Apple and Amazon, who are the two biggest competitors to Spotify each gave $1 million to Trump's inauguration. And it's like, it's something bigger than politics for me. It's just like, man, like, why do these companies give this kind of money to an inauguration? Like, Donald Trump does not need any money for his inauguration. And like, this is, this is where like the part of me that like the part of my soul that like spiritually aligns with the artists feels like, man, like, I would much rather Spotify be spending their time, money, and influence in figuring out better ways to pay artists, better ways for them to make more money, charge us more, like, figure something out. Like, I'm so just disheartened and disillusioned at constantly having to read my favorite artists talk about how little they get from Spotify, and then to turn around and see all of this money going to political. And again, I would be making this exact same argument even if Kamala Harris had won. Like, why are you guys giving money to Kamala Harris? Like, it just pains me a little bit that, again, this is where like the art and commerce, that where those two things meet. I know it's always messy, and I know this is just sort of how things work, but it was just a little disappointing to me, I guess. Just not that, split $150,000 amongst how many artists they paid out. We're talking that's pennies of royalties, but it's still not nothing. And
Well,
the optics of
but
it
the thing
are,
is that, we know Spotify is contractually obligated to pay out an exact percentage of revenue, and then they got to make it work otherwise. And so they are consistently continuing to try and build revenue streams outside of music so that they can build a revenue stream that they don't have to share with the labels.
right.
But the music money is always going to be the exact percentage that was negotiated with the record labels. And again, they rebuilt the music industry online when people had completely and utterly stopped paying for music back in 2000,
That's true.
2005. And
Yeah.
they're not, I know that they're not like heroes, but they get painted as these ultimate villains all the time. And I don't think they totally deserve it, even though they also kind of step on their own toes from time to time and make themselves look bad.
I think it would be like, I think probably like part of the problem too is, again, if you just from the artist perspective, we know the overwhelming majority of artists are very liberal and do not align with the Trump administration in any way, shape, or form. And, this secondary revenue stream that Spotify is building is not exclusively, but really like Joe Rogan being the heaviest hitter. And I know we won't get into this, like, what are his politics thing, but a lot of the artists do not align with what Joe Rogan is about, what that whole thing, right wing. I'll just call it right wing, like, for the sake of just,
yeah. But he was
just
apolitical. He was basically not political at all, or kind of maybe even on the left when he signed with them. They also have Call Her Daddy. They've got all hosts and hosts of podcasts. I know Rogan is the one that everybody thinks about.
But it was also like I know Ben Shapiro was also at the brunch that they hosted. Like, that's another one. Like, it's a little bit like,
they invited the podcasters who were going to happen to be there, and yeah, Ben Shapiro was there.
Yeah, exactly. So it's,
if Bill Maher had been there, they might have invited him too, but he wasn't going to be there.
Yeah, for me, I think it was like, again, more so just the optics of all of it. It's because I think I just get exhausted with like being a music fan and a music consumer that loves Spotify. And I do. I will not lie about it. I love Spotify. Like, it provides me with tons of music everywhere I go. It has introduced me to so much music I would not have otherwise discovered, which I absolutely love. I think their predictive algorithm blows all the competition out of the water. I think they are by far the best at their predictive algorithm. But on the flip side of it, like, their music quality is arguably the worst of all of them. Still waiting for Spotify HD or whatever it is. Like, where the hell is that? Like, we keep hearing like, oh, it's coming, and then it just It's never here. And to see like the payments that the artists get, and whether that blame goes with Spotify or the labels or whatever, like I'm not here to talk about that, but it's just exhausting that Spotify somehow always finds themselves somewhere in this like middle area, like where it doesn't feel like they're really aligned with the music artists. And that's the part that just made me raise my eyebrows when I saw this article, because it was just like, oh, here we go again, Spotify.
Oh yeah.
So
No, and I get it. And I try and be fair. I try, I think people assign a lot of opinions and narratives to companies that are just being pragmatic, and we don't always enjoy the pragmatism because
right.
we want them to stand for something more or be noble. But I don't look to politicians to lead me anywhere. I don't look to companies and people who are interested in commerce to lead the way for me morally or whatever else, because I've tried that, and there's nobody passes the purity test, especially when they're
Ain't that the
interested in
truth?
making money.
Yeah.
And so I will utilize them as far as they're useful to me. I will continue bands. I'm sure you could tell me a dozen different ways that Patreon is a bad company too, but set up that Patreon and I will continue to support you through there. Give me avenues to buy your stuff and support you, and I will do it. We're all doing the best we can. And you and I aren't in a position to start a Spotify competitor. And so we're suckers, spending our monthly fees just like everybody else and looking for better ways to support bands that we love. We hope creating this little platform on the internet and talking about bands that maybe get undercovered elsewhere or maybe don't get discovered by people who are old and crusty like us who might enjoy them. Maybe we're doing our little part. But yeah, as long as Spotify is the best tool for me to continue to listen to that music and bring it to this platform, I'm going to continue to use it. I've tried Apple Music too. I've tried them all.
Yeah.
I just can't. I only have so much time in the day as my part-time gig to.
Yeah. I will say Tidal was still by far the closest I came to being able to switch. I liked a lot about Tidal, but their user interface on their app was just too clunky for me, and I got too frustrated with it, and so I went back to Spotify. But everything you just said is perfectly well said. I do agree with pretty much all of that. So it's just this is the world we're stuck in. You can sit here and like say I wish we lived in this alternate universe where all the bands were taken care of and Foxing is the highest paid band in the world, as they justly should be, and all this and that. But unfortunately it's not the world we live in, so just make do with what we got.
And hopefully the world we live in next week has a couple of new releases we could talk about. We're also probably going to finally dive in and discuss one of these records that we've been alluding to having an anniversary. And then I don't want to spoil it, but you and I are going to steal an idea we saw from another podcast because it's a great idea and our version of it will be different, where we're essentially going to rank every band that's ever existed.
Yep, pretty much. Yep.
That's it.
I mean,
should be no problem,
right? Look, it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm very
can't
curious
wait to get to Jimmy Buffett.
How long this is going to take us to accomplish, because like we think it might like, oh well, we can fly through this, but with you and me, like, there's no way. So it'll be
the
fun.
Fights are going to be epic while we try and put them on tiers.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks so much for listening, everybody. We appreciate you guys showing up to listen to us and to watch us on YouTube. We see the comments. We're seeing the ratings and the reviews on the platforms. We even have some people listening to the podcast on Spotify. So we appreciate you guys.
Hey, we love Spotify. Big Spotify guys here. So
we could use a contract, Spotify. It'd be awesome.
That's right.
But anyway, thanks so much for listening. We will talk to you next time. It's been the Album of Record podcast.